Hello everyone, thanks for joining me today. I have a really fun die set to show you. This is the large die of the month from Spellbinders, and it is called Stitched for You. This one has a lot of dies included in it, but the star of the show is this giant U die that you can cut out and stitch around. This makes for some really fast stitching if you don't like to do a lot of stitching. This will go really fast. It also has the outline die that goes behind the letters. And then it includes a lot of smaller sentiments, and it's only smaller by comparison because these are really big. But you can have the sentiments on your cards that say, thank you, happy birthday to you, hello you, and also from me to you. And they also have the shadow dies to go with them. But these were really fun because the letters cut out separately. I pulled out a bunch of Spellbinders cardstock to use on card number 1, as well as some pretty kind of a rose pink embroidery floss. So I went ahead and cut out everything off camera. I cut out the U with some Barely Peach cardstock. And now we're going to do a little bit of stitching on this. So I'm going to use all 6 strands on this embroidery floss. You can break it apart or pull it apart if you'd like. But the holes in these dies are bigger this time, it seems like. So you can fit all 6 strands through it. And I'm using my tweezers to help me hold this die. It can be kind of delicate in places. And I found that the tweezers gave me a good handle on this die while I was stitching. And again, there's not a lot to stitch, but it just provides a fun pop of color on your die cut. So I'm just slowly pulling it through so it doesn't knot up, and then going back up the middle, and then down into the next hole. You could do a back stitching around the circle flower if you want it to be fuller. But I'm going to keep it pretty simple today. And with the aid of my tweezers, I'm not accidentally bending this die cut. You could also die cut it twice and glue them together if you want it to be really stiff, more like a chipboard. Okay, and there is the first flower all done. Isn't that pretty? Okay, so I'll go ahead and do my embroidery work, the rest of it, off camera, but I am going to tie a little knot on my 2 ends. You could tape them in place, you could glue them in place, whatever you prefer. I'm going to tie a knot and then add a little dab of glue just to provide that extra security. I'll just kind of dab it around the flower and cut off the ends. And here it is all completed. Isn't that pretty? I cut out the shadow pieces with some Portobello cardstock. It's kind of a dark craft. I'm using some Barely Art precision glue to glue this down. I'm being pretty generous with the glue, going all around the stitching. You could even go on the stitching. And then I can just press that into place, and I have to hold it down for just a minute because of the bulk of the embroidery floss. And here's a close-up look at the finished stitched U. Isn't that such a nice size too? I love it. Okay, so I cut out the letters and the shadow piece that say thank. And these are very narrow alphabet letters. They look really nice on the shadow piece. I'll just use more liquid glue to do this. Put the K in place, and then I'm going to pull out the embossing folder of the month. Here's a close-up look at the thank. So the embossing folder for May is called Faux Stitch for obvious reasons. A lot of the club kits this month involve the stitching, which I just love. It's so much fun. I'm using a piece of Dahlia Pink cardstock, and I'm going to run this through my embossing machine. And here it is all embossed. This is going to be the background for my sentiment. And then I can just glue this down onto my white card base. I often like to leave a white border around the edge of my cards, but this time I didn't. There wasn't a lot of real estate with these large sentiments, but I am going to bring in some black licorice twine just to add even more texture and interest to the card. I'm putting it down on the card in kind of a messy circle. I want to make sure that it's wide enough to go behind the thank. I'm just kind of gauging where to place this. And then I like to find the ends to the string or the twine and glue those in place so they don't pop out. I'll use a little bit of liquid glue to do this, and my tweezers to help out. And then once that is dry, I'm going to pop this up with some foam strips. Let's press that into place. And then the U I'm going to glue down flat with some more liquid glue. I'll press this into place. And then I do add some gold gems around the card. And here is a close-up look. Isn't that fun? I really love bold sentiment cards like this. It makes such a fun impact. And it's relatively fast to put together, which segues into card number 2 very nicely. I'm going to do something really fast instead of stitching on this card. So I cut out the shadow piece with alabaster cardstock, and I cut out the U letters with some lunar gray cardstock. I'm also using a little bottle of Nuvo Drops, and I rarely use my Nuvo Drops. I think I prefer just to grab my gems or my pre-made enamel dots. This time we're going to use the Nuvo dots instead of stitching. I liked the green and the gray together, so we're going to add little pops of green over this sentiment. So I'm going into each little dot and adding a drop of the Nuvo Drops. You're going to need to let this dry for a good while. And then once it dried, mine did sink in a little bit, and then I went over it one more time just to get the nice bubbly effect. But isn't that pretty? So this is a fast way to create these cards if you don't want to stitch. And here it is all done. And this is with applying the Nuvo Drops twice. You could also just add gemstones to the centers of the flowers, and I think that would look really pretty too. So I used my embossing folder on this piece of, let's see, it's chamomile yellow cardstock. And then I cut out the hello shadow with some gray cardstock, and I'm adding the alabaster cardstock on top of it. This one's going to say hello you. But here's a close-up look at the yellow cardstock embossed with the faux stitch embossing folder. I love the yellow and the gray and the green together. So this time I'm popping up the U with some foam squares. I'll put that down at the bottom. And then I used the large die of the month from last month, from April, to create a bunch of flowers. But first, let's go ahead and glue down the hello. This one's going to be flat on the card this time. Popping up the U with the foam squares makes it easy for me to tuck my flowers behind, so I'll show you that in just a minute. So this is the large die of the month from last month, from April, and it's called Say Cheese, and it had the most beautiful floral images in it. I already die cut them and put them together, but I'm just going to glue them down around this panel. I'll just tuck it behind the U. I'll add some greenery right next to it. And then I have a little blue flower, and I'm going to put that right in the middle of the O in hello. I added a few silver gems around this card, And here is a close-up look. So if you want to create a really fast card using the large die of the month for May, pull out your Nuvo Drops or your gems. The Nuvo Drops creates some really fun texture to your cards as well. I will list the link to the large die of the month for May of 2022 in the description box if you're interested in checking that out, as well as all of the other products that I used to create these two cards. I hope you enjoyed this video and were inspired. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. Have a wonderful day. Bye.